through the post, you get lots of things where you scratch up all the numbers, and then you find if you bring an 0891 number and talk for at least half an hour, you'll then get a surprise, a booby prize. I have it here, courtesy of Nick, and I'm about to reveal this. But anyway, let's get through the cards first. Congratulations, best wishes to you. Yeah, to you both from all at Shelthorpe Hearts Football Club. That's going back a bit, isn't it? Dean was involved in a money laundering racket Hearts Football Club and a Colombian drug trafficker. It was the sort of thing that attracted community support, never, aroused any sort of suspicion, that sort of thing. And they're obviously still indebted to him. Quite an expensive card, I think, but fantastic. Special hola and good wishes from Juan, here of Caracas, and family Barcelona. P.S. Mrs. Caswell, please let Dee come on tour to Belgium. Yeah. Right, okay, good. So, applying early on there. Where are we now? I've got the International Telegram. Caroline and Dean have a lovely something. Handy day. Happy day, even. We shall be thinking of you back and something or other. And we'll definitely drink a toast. Yes. Lots of love, Rick and Stephanie. Yeah, that makes sense. Really good. Telegram. That's a lovely romantic card here, isn't that nice? A bit of daguerreotype. Cool. To Caroline and Dee, my thoughts are with you today and wish you both every happiness in the future. Bob's love. Colleen. Thank you. I'm learning something here. Always read cards in advance. I'm trying to read them. Congratulations, Caroline. Good luck, Dean. You will need it. All the best to you both, Bill, Chris, Emma, Adam. A friend. Yes. International Telegram. These are always rather dramatic, aren't they? Dean and Caroline, congratulations, best wishes, Auntie Betty, a tractor and a pig. On this sheet is written all the dirt that I've applied on Caroline in the last 2 hours. which is quite important. There's no significance of facts sheet. But these cards are designed to sort of emphasise Dean's roots. You'll appreciate that I've known Dean for a lot longer than I've known Caroline. Well, sometimes it doesn't feel that way. But Dean is the sort of person who is a dream as far as a best man speech is concerned in some ways. Because there's such a lot of it. Some people, you don't know where to start. For example, you can have problems where you've got a lot of dirt with a capital D. But it's the sort of stuff that can't be used in polite surroundings. Dean is excellent from that point of view because it's just so much material, which is more or less respectable. I mean, it's not necessarily very respectable. Some of this is probably a bit on the margin. I'd like to apologise for any offence that I caused. However, Dean, of course, comes originally from an agricultural background, hence the theme. But I first got to know him sort of after that stage in Loughborough. Some of the people here went to Loughborough where Dean was at college, as you'll all probably know. And he was an interesting case to meet, that's fair to say. He wasn't a typical sort of student. In a moment of carelessness, several of us here today ended up sharing a house with him. That was fine. I mean, he was quite a reasonable bloke. I was always around for drinks, that sort of thing. But the problem was the cooking. The difficulty with the cooking was that Dean was quite willing to do his share of cooking, so like every Thursday or every Wednesday, every Dean's turn. People often ate out on those sorts of things. The reason was he used to have an interesting sort of style in menu, and I want to emphasise this was not lack of willingness on his part. But if I give you a couple of examples, you'll find out why we used to end up having a lot of Indian takeaways at the time. For example, Irish omelette. Dean's speciality was Irish omelette. There is one more outrageous dish that I'll mention in a minute. And Irish omelette is in fact mashed potato. there's no milk added, or eggs, or milk, or anything anything like that. It's just potato mashed up. On one occasion, it was rather unfortunate. It was so revolting that somebody decided they had to hide it, and they hid it on top of a cupboard. And it was only discovered 6 months later when the stench became too much. But I mean, we've just eaten, so I won't go into too much for that. The other most outrageous thing with Alison, my wife, who was my wife then, and I experienced was the Alpen risotto. Now, Alpen risotto may sound bad enough, but just think if you add sardines to that. Dean conjured this up. This is serious. Dean conjured this up. He's not denying it, is he? Dean conjured this up in a whole residence that he was living in at the time. And it was literally, it started off okay. I think it was sort of corned beef and sort of rice and that sort of thing. And then the sardines and the Alpen went in. And that is truly the most inedible meal you've ever had. It's absolutely disgusting. Trying to eat up some leftovers. But never mind. I mean, Dean was a decent sort of chap, and one could make allowances for that sort of thing. At that time, he was a fairly sort of low-key sort of character, but while he was at Loughborough, and he was at Loughborough for a very long time. I don't think he was at Loughborough for 3 or 4 years, or 6 years. I think Dean was at Loughborough for 12 years. Now, you go to college, your parents think, oh, that's nice. Get his degree, go and get a proper job. No, Dean thought that each term lasts 3 years. he got confused. I think it's fair to say. But unfortunately, his degree course ran out. That was one of the big problems. So he decided to have to invent new careers for himself. And now the standard employ, which is, for example, one that I used, is that you get yourself a full-time job with the Students' Union. Now, that's okay as far as it goes. For example, I was the union treasurer, and then I had a year in industry, so that's struck out. I also failed a year, so I had to retake that. So I was getting on to 6 years. The 6 years was an entirely inadequate period for an operator like Dean. He needed to go to something much more serious. So he had a sabbatical, then he had another sabbatical. So he was up to, we had a 4-year course, so he was up to 6 years by then. But he thought, oh dear, the world of work beckons. This is not really, there's not much you can do with a degree in woodwork. So I better go and drink something else. So when he was union president, El Supremo, he thought, I know, I'll go one better than having endless sabbaticals. I'll create myself a permanent job. So he created himself a job which was sort of rag and charities and community liaison officer. I think Harry, Dean's current boss, fell for this on his CV. I mean, Harry didn't spot that this was clearly a blatant attempt to elongate the students. He created this job and then applied for it. Now, it is astonishing to me that nobody worked out that this was just a blatant piece of jobs for the boys, or even job for the boys, or job for Dean. But that's the key to Dean's success. He comes across as entirely non-threatening. He's always pursuing his own agenda in the most sort of, I mean, I don't mean that disparagingly. I mean, he's a thoroughly good chap in that. But Dean is much more purposeful than people who don't know him very well work out. So the next thing you know, there he is, ensconced there. Another 4 years goes by, 12 years on the clock. Oh, I got that wrong. Now, that's been another couple of years. 6 years. 6 years. Oh, yeah, 6 years. Oh, well, there you go. There's your 12 years. A nice result and a lovely existence. A lot of good work while he was there, but I think that illustrates that Dean is not as dozy as those who don't know him well sometimes think, especially at the end of the night in the pub. Another of the great, one thing I must mention is a friend reminded me of, he's not really a friend of Dean's, somebody reminded me of that Dean used to go to NUS conferences, National Union Student Conferences, and on one legendary occasion in Blackpool, I can see people grimacing in the Dean's political inclinations were, I think it's fair to say, somewhat right of centre. He demonstrated adequately. The problem with student union conferences was that they were all rather a lot of pontification and not much actual result. Although in those days we did this taken terribly seriously. But Dean found the ultimate way of expressing his political conviction. He threw up on a copy of the Socialist Worker. I have to say that was after a night in which he'd run 16 hurdles, which was understandable. But I don't think it was a random event. One of the other great institutions that that Dean's associated with is a New Year disco. Many of you will be familiar with this. Dean comes from a village which has a population of about 500. It's been expanded, hasn't it? And he's been doing the New Year disco there since records began, really, around about the time of the Doomsday. The trouble with Dean's disco is it is marginally quieter than the jukebox in the pub. One of the difficulties that he has, there's a lounge bar and a public bar. And he has to just go in the lounge bar, the jukebox is up the other end. And if you stand about a foot from Dean's disco, which you're actually going to experience later on, so don't get too excited, you can hear the thumping beat of the jukebox from about 500 yards away. It's become a bit of a sort of standing joke, really, this particular problem. But the other thing is that Dean tries to string these discos out for as long as possible, and the pub landlord has a number of innovative ways of clearing him out of the place. He just keeps going until 4 or 5 in the morning, as long as there's a supply of pints of lager arriving as he goes along. But for example, on one occasion where we set the record, I think it was about 4:30 in the morning, the landlord came hoovering round the smooching couple. It was really, we could try and recreate that tonight, couldn't we? If things really keep going nicely. Because we'll have all the other components. We'll have the ultimate light show. These lights are soon to be made. The rear here is astonishing. And do ask Dean to play some LPs, because the sheer tinniness is breathtaking. One of the closest times that I came to contact with Dean was when he was a lodger in our house in Weybridge. These were dark days. He got a new job with El Harry over there, but didn't have anywhere to live at the time, so he came to live down in town. It was difficult times. Alison was pregnant, and having Dean as a lodger was an interesting experience. For example, when the chain of empty lager cans stretched entirely round the lounge, Alison said, "I really think this is enough. You've really got to recycle these things. It's just not good enough." We had the usual problems with catering. We were on 1 in 3 rota, as you might expect, and Alison and I took 2 in 1. But never. Dean has also actually been a best man himself, I think on one occasion. Now, I'm very glad to say I'm not. I don't know whether I was going to be able to use this because Dean might mention it in his speech, but I'm glad that I did not have Dean's problem today. The bride is exactly who I expected to be. Dean had a bit of a problem when he was best man. The first problem was, I think, how long did you know you had been best man for? It was 6 months? Probably. Yeah, 3 months. And not only did he not know, he was called Simon, he's not here today, so I can say this quite freely, but the other problem was that he switched fiancés a week before the wedding. But he didn't bother to mention this to Dean. So Dean had to rather rapidly rewrite his script, which was daunting. So I'm very glad that the dirt I picked up on Caroline today is still current. Very, very glad of that. Now, on to Dean's romantic side. Dean's had a fairly checkered sort of history. Now, it's not really good form. Tempting though it is to go through all the past ladies in Dean's life, I know that's really nothing. So I'm going to move straight on to Caroline. We knew that there was trouble when Nance and I went round for dinner with Dean and Caroline at his flat. We arrived there thinking, well, there must be something up here. It's just the 4 of us, this can't just be a casual little relationship. They'd already been to Bruges as part of sort of foursome. And we were broad-minded, but not that broad-minded. But we thought, well, there must be something up there. And we thought, what we must do, we thought Dean's probably using this as a blind. He's probably just getting us there as sort of stalking horses. And the most important thing is that we leg it as soon as, the lights go down and it's getting on a bit and the meal's finished, leaving the coast clear. I think a reasonable sort of approach. The only problem was that I think it was about 1 second after we stood up and said, we really ought to be going now, Caroline's gone. And I remember saying to Alison on the way home, it's not looking too good, is it? Now, this just shows you the time you can waste on these sorts of comings and goings at the start of relationships, because at the same time, Hillary, Caroline's friend, was saying to Caroline, he must really like, you know, he's invited his best friends round for dinner, he must really be in with a chance here. I don't think he's interesting, I mean, honestly. It could have all gone horribly right. I don't actually know how they did manage to communicate properly after. I think Caroline just said, I'm in charge, and they went on from there. I think it's fair to say that Caroline is very much in charge of Dean. And I know that Dean must be seriously in love with Caroline. And the reason I know this is because Dean is one of the most anti-nagging people I've ever met. He is paranoid about nagging. And Caroline nags him constantly. And does he do anything about it? No, he doesn't. He just says, oh no, well, no, she's right, you know. I shall tell you just how bad this has got. And this is really something to Dean, because he has always been, you know, really very jumpy about this. He met a lovely girl once, who I thought was great. He said, no, she's a nag. and that was it. For example, we had a big debate yesterday about whether, when the bride walks into the church, the groom and the best man are supposed to look round. You know, you may have noticed he was staring rigidly ahead. The reason for that is because I that's the best thing to do, but he said, we decided that was the best thing to do. But I asked him again about it this morning. He goes, oh no, Caroline says I've got to turn round. I said, can you just make this decision? You'll notice that I did prevail just that one, but I think it was the last time. I think it's, he's thrown the towel in. There have been a number of improvements in Dean's household since Caroline and Jennifer, right? For example, Dean now changes his underwear on a daily basis. and I gather he's even wearing a fresh shirt every day at work, which must be good for Harry and Scott. I'm pleased that Caroline has been able to influence things to the better. Now, on to Caroline. I'm holding up this sheet now, which, as you know, has the information on Caroline on it. I've got a couple. You know, you can hire private detectives to look into people's backgrounds. You know, this is often a good idea, especially if you're getting into a lifetime commitment. Clearly, this is something that Dean decided to accommodate. For example, did you know that Caroline, until quite recently, had a life-size model of Noel Edmonds? I find that really quite worrying. But not as worrying, Jan didn't tell me this, by the way. But not as worrying as the fact that she used to be, I have to say with Jan, so she doesn't get off scot-free, a Crystal Palace dolly girl. Apparently this is some sort of cheerleader with a few extra bits. I mean, I have no idea. Did you have any idea about that? Oh, you did? Did you know about Noel Edmonds? Yes. Never mind. Anyway. Okay. Right. Now, where are we going now? Oh, here we are. Right, on to the next bit. I've only got a couple more things to say. Now, Jennifer's very worried about this speech, because Jennifer thinks that I'm going to say something either embarrassing or downright rude about food. I'm actually going to do nothing of the sort. What I did want to say is that I sympathise with Jennifer. Because it can't be nice the thought of sharing a house with somebody who spends at least 40% of their disposable income on Star Trek videos. But the thing I like about Jennifer is that she is entirely pragmatic about this, and on the basis of you can't beat enjoyment. She has got herself a boyfriend in the form of Hugh, who is probably more of a trickie than Dean. So I think the general idea is that she's going to lock them both in a room and go out with her mum, which seems to be eminently sensible. And indeed, Caroline and Dean are in the process of buying a very large house, and the reason for buying this very large house is so that Dean can have a Trek suite in it and doesn't have to inflict it on anybody else. Now, a couple of little presents, one of which is from Mick, and apparently this means something to you, Dean. Happy memories of the mountain of Planoles. Viva España. Right, sure. Yes. That's right, here it is. This is apparently acutely embarrassing if you know the joke. And the other thing, one of the things when groups of us, people from Loughborough go to get married, we like to mark the occasion with a bit of a stag do. Now this is more traditional, but these stag do's have been getting longer and longer and longer as the years have gone on. We figured that Dean may be one of the last of us to have a full-blown stag, so this time we went for a 5-day, 4 nights, 3 venue, 2 countries, 1 Dean stag, which centred on Surbiton, not that exotic, I'll grant you, Loughborough and Madrid. He said, Milan, I can't remember where I was. And we had a jolly good cracking time. And one of the traditions is to present the groom with a very embarrassing souvenir photo. There's a quick flash. Can you see how embarrassing that is? Now, the thing about this is, and I recall this happening rather embarrassingly at my own wedding, I was presented with an album like this, and unfortunately it fell into the hand of A, the in-laws, and B, this sort of older generations amongst the guests. And it's a lot worse than this. But I suggest we will try and keep this out of everybody else's hands, but if you do insist on having a look, please feel free. Finally, I'd just like to propose a toast to Dean and Caroline. I'm sure they're going to be extremely happy together. Long life.